Beneath the familiar internet platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Google, there exists a hidden layer known as the dark web. This secretive and unregulated realm hosts websites that cannot be accessed through standard search engines. It is a mysterious part of the internet where almost anything is possible. For some time, the most notorious site on the dark web was Silk Road, an online black market offering a wide array of illegal items and services. These ranged from body parts and weapons to hired killers and, most frequently, drugs. Silk Road earned the nickname the Amazon of drugs since users could browse the site, select any substance they desired, and have it delivered to their homes as conveniently as an Amazon order. What might be even more astonishing is the identity behind this vast illegal network. Allow us to introduce Ryan Ulbricht, the unexpected central figure of this story. Ryan grew up in a caring family in Texas, was a Boy Scout during his childhood, pursued physics at university, and was regarded as a kind-hearted individual by everyone who knew him. Imagine their disbelief when it was revealed that Ryan was the criminal genius orchestrating the largest online drug market in history, accounting for over $1.2 billion in illicit sales. Moreover, this gentle person was allegedly involved in hiring assassins to eliminate opponents? Or was he? To this day, doubts remain about Ryan's guilt. In this video, we will explore the shadowy world surrounding this controversy. The dark web holds many secrets, and today we delve into the real story behind the notorious Silk Road marketplace. We will also reveal how the government managed to track down Ryan Ulbricht even though he was using the Tor browser, which made him seem completely invisible. How do you catch someone who appears impossible to trace? This true story is full of mysteries, surprising turns, and even a few dishonest officials. Welcome to the captivating journey of the Silk Road saga. Ryan Ulbricht aimed to make a significant impact on the world, yet his life up until that point had been a series of near successes. He experimented with multiple business ventures but never quite found his breakthrough, feeling as if time was slipping away. However, there was one idea he kept revisiting. An online marketplace where anyone could buy or sell virtually anything, without limitations or bans. Ryan was a committed libertarian who often debated why the government should not hold excessive control over individual freedoms, especially concerning drugs, which he believed ought to be legalized. He would argue, it is not the government's right to dictate what substances people can or cannot consume. When opponents raised safety concerns, Ryan countered by asking, should we also ban Big Macs from McDonald's because they cause weight gain, heart problems, and death? Or what about cars that claim millions of lives annually? To Ryan, the logic was clear. The concept of a marketplace where individuals could purchase and sell anything they desired was not merely a business opportunity to earn substantial profits in Ryan Ulbricht's eyes. It represented a means to liberate people and bring positive change to the world. After conducting some investigation, Ryan discovered the existence of a web browser known as Tor, which provided access to the dark web, a place where users could not be tracked or monitored. The Tor browser was originally created by the United States Navy to facilitate private communication over the internet by hiding a user's true IP address and identity. Understanding this, Ryan realized that people could make purchases online without the government being able to monitor their activities. However, initially, Ryan did not pursue the idea further because there was no reliable method for accepting online payments that could not be easily tracked. For instance, credit cards recorded every transaction made and were connected to individuals' bank accounts. As a result, the concept stayed as a mere notion in Ryan's mind for some time, until the summer of 2010. During that summer, Ryan encountered a new innovation called Bitcoin, a digital currency that could be transferred anonymously. This allowed users to buy whatever they wished without leaving a trace behind. It was precisely the solution he needed. From his bedroom, Ryan began developing his new online marketplace, choosing to name it Silk Road, after a renowned trade route that began over 2,000 years ago, and was used for centuries to transport a wide variety of goods. Naturally, Ryan Ulbricht was extremely cautious about anyone discovering the website he was creating, which unfortunately meant he had to develop everything entirely on his own. The only person he confided in at the beginning was his girlfriend, Claire. Claire was somewhat worried, but Ryan assured her that with the Tor web browser and Bitcoin, the whole process would remain completely anonymous and untraceable back to him. When it came to building the site itself, progress was slow since creating a full online marketplace solo was an enormous task. Nevertheless, Ryan was committed and spent long hours turning his vision into reality, sitting at his laptop coding all day. Most nights, He took brief breaks just to watch one of his favorite shows, Breaking Bad, which tells the story of an ordinary man who becomes a drug kingpin. As Ryan approached the finish line with the Silk Road website, he realized a crucial problem. He needed some products to actually offer on his new marketplace. It made no sense to create the platform if visitors arrived and found nothing to purchase. To solve this, Ryan rented a remote building in the middle of nowhere and started cultivating his own magic mushrooms using a book that was basically a beginner's guide to growing mushrooms. This became the very first product ever sold on the Silk Road marketplace. By early 2011, after a year of development, Ryan was ready to unveil the site to the world. He had added categories for every type of product imaginable. Starting with various kinds of drugs, initially the only product listed was the mushrooms that Ryan Ulbricht had cultivated himself. However, the idea was that vendors from across the globe would showcase their own products for purchase. Naturally, to attract both purchasers and vendors to the platforms, he had to promote them effectively. It is important to point out that websites on the dark web do not appear in regular search engine results. Moreover, Ryan could not simply run advertisements on platforms like Facebook or Google to find customers for his illicit marketplace. To spread the news about his new websites, Ryan visited multiple online forums to share information. For instance, he became a member of a community called the Shroomery, a spot for mushroom enthusiasts, and made a post pretending to be a buyer interested in using Silk Road. He did this to avoid making it obvious that he was advertising his own sites. Ryan understood that casually mentioning Silk Road would encourage people on the forums to look it up themselves, which they did. Orders began to arrive swiftly. This took place in early 2011, coinciding with Ryan's job at a small Texas bookstore named Goodwagon Books. This arrangement turned out to be very convenient because Ryan had all the tools he needed to ship his mushrooms efficiently. He was able to utilize the bookstore's padded envelopes and label printer. Additionally, he employed a vacuum sealer, typically used to preserve food, to package the mushrooms securely. Thus, Ryan was well prepared to manage the mailing process smoothly. The business began by dispatching orders only twice a week, but as the site gained popularity through word of mouth, Ryan Ulbricht soon found himself sending shipments daily since orders kept pouring in. Even more impressive was that other individuals started offering products on Silk Road. Various vendors created their own listings featuring everything from marijuana to cocaine to ecstasy, which naturally attracted a growing number of buyers. Silk Road initially took a commission of 6.23% on every transaction to encourage trust among users. Ryan also developed a rating system where buyers and sellers could leave feedback about each other, similar to the review systems found on eBay or Amazon. Ryan dedicated countless hours to improving the site and was constantly drained but also thrilled by its rapid expansion. When he first launched Silk Road, he honestly wasn't sure if anyone would even use it. Yet within just a few months, he was earning thousands of dollars in revenue. He shared the website's success with his girlfriend Claire, but she was less enthusiastic. Claire grew worried when she learned that harder drugs were now being sold on the platform, especially after discovering that heroin was available. Her concerns increased and she confronted Ryan, asking what would happen if someone overdosed or if the sellers sent out products that were tampered with or laced with dangerous substances. Ryan responded with confidence. Regarding the rating system, he explained that if someone sold poor quality drugs, they would receive a low rating, and eventually nobody would purchase from them. Claire responded simply saying yes, but how could buyers leave a bad rating if they were already dead? While Silk Road had been expanding moderately through word of mouth, its growth exploded after Gawker published an article about the platform. Once that piece appeared online, numerous other media outlets began covering Silk Road as well, describing it as a secret marketplace where you could obtain any kind of drug imaginable. Even major television networks such as ABC and NBC started discussing the website, which only increased its visibility tremendously. Thousands of drug transactions flowed through the dark web marketplace called Silk Road. Of course, not all the attention was positive. Various government agencies started monitoring the site and launched investigations to identify who was managing it. However, due to the use of Tor, they understood that tracing the operator would be remarkably challenging. Meanwhile, Ryan Ulbricht began dedicating himself fully to Silk Road as a job since it was growing much faster than he had anticipated. The website now hosted hundreds of sellers and thousands of buyers. Though Ryan had already sold all the mushrooms he personally grew, he was earning commissions on every transaction through the platform. As the income steadily increased, the thrill was palpable. One morning, however, he opened his laptop and Ryan Ulbricht noticed that someone had recently posted guns there. He tried to convince himself that owning a firearm was an American constitutional right, and therefore not a problem. However, Claire saw things quite differently. She pleaded with Ryan, "You need to stop this," urging him to consider why anyone would feel the need to buy a gun anonymously. This disagreement sparked an argument between Ryan and Claire. Afterwards, Claire went to her friend Erica's house to vent. Increasingly uneasy about everything Ryan was involved in, Claire confided in Erica about Ryan running the Silk Road. She made Erica promise to keep it a secret, and for a while, it seemed that Erica had honored that commitment. One morning, Ryan logged into Facebook and was shocked to see a public post on his wall from Erica, Claire's closest friend. The message read, "I'm sure the authorities would want to know about Ryan Ulbricht's drug websites." Instantly, panic overwhelmed him, and tears streamed down his face as a flood of emotions surged. First, he was furious that Claire had shared his secret with someone else. Then he felt devastated by the betrayal of trust. Above all, fear gripped his heart like never before. He hurriedly removed Erica's post from his Facebook wall and called her in tears, begging her never to speak of it to anyone again. As for why Erica made such a public accusation, it all began when Erica had. Claire experienced a negative reaction after using a substance she purchased from the Silk Road. When she returned from the hospital, she got into an argument with both Claire and Ryan Ulbricht, which ended with Ryan telling Erica to leave. In a state of intoxication, Erica then posted something on Facebook as an act of revenge. Fortunately for Ryan, he saw the post quickly enough and deleted it before it was widely viewed. Only their Facebook friends could have seen it at all, and they probably thought it was just a joke. For now, the situation seemed to be under control, but this event made Ryan extremely uneasy. The relationship between Claire and Ryan also came to an end because Claire refused to let Ryan continue running the site from her apartment. She gave him an ultimatum: either shut the site down or move out. Ryan chose to leave. In fact, after the incident with Erica, Ryan decided that he needed to leave the country for a while as a safety measure, so he went traveling. Ryan headed to Bondi Beach in Australia for some relaxation. He traveled to Vietnam to celebrate the Lunar New Year and backpacked through Asia, hopping between different islands and staying in youth hostels. Throughout his travels, none of the people he met had any idea that Ryan was running the world's largest illegal site or that he was now worth millions of dollars in Bitcoin. Life was going well for him. The only drawback of his journey was that Ryan often had to depend on an internet connection to stay connected. Ryan Ulbricht had to rely on cafes for internet access so he could maintain his websites and, understandably, he was nervous about people catching a glimpse of his screen and discovering what he was doing. Because of this, he always chose a secluded corner in the internet cafes. Additionally, he programmed his laptop so that pressing a particular key would instantly turn the display black whenever he felt someone might be spying on his activity. The fear of getting arrested was especially intense since he was technically wanted worldwide due to Silk Road being an international platform. The idea of ending up imprisoned in Southeast Asia, where capital punishment for drug offenses was a reality, was particularly chilling. The swift expansion of the site brought numerous challenges as well. It turned out that Ryan, attempting to build an entire marketplace on his own, had left many bugs in the code. One especially serious error caused the site to lose money briefly whenever a purchase was made instead of generating revenue. This forced Ryan to temporarily suspend new registrations on Silk Road while he scrambled to resolve the problem. Now working tirelessly around the clock, he struggled to handle emerging problems including hacker attacks demanding ransom in Bitcoin, customer complaints, and shipments confiscated by postal services. As the site's reputation continued to rise, Ryan recognized that like any growing enterprise, he needed a team to assist him. Ryan Ulbricht began by recruiting from within, hiring active Silk Road users to assist him in managing operations. Before long, he had assembled a team of 10 staff members. Some were rewriting his flawed code, others moderated the Silk Road forums, while a few handled customer support and resolved disputes. Although Ryan technically compensated these employees, most considered it more than just a job because they shared similar political beliefs and felt united by a mission to create something monumental. They believed Silk Road was destined to transform the world. At the same time, new product categories began emerging on the platform. For instance, some vendors started offering spyware and tools designed to hack into people's webcams. It was also possible to purchase passports, counterfeit identification documents, or even fake currency that was nearly indistinguishable from genuine money. In one extraordinary case, someone listed a rocket launcher for sale, while another tried to sell cyanide, a notorious poison. Then one morning, Ryan received a message from a moderator asking, "Should we allow the sale of kidneys?" Apparently, a user on Silk Road wanted to trade various human body parts. The seller insisted that all organs were donated voluntarily. Naturally, Ryan felt uneasy since this was far from what he had originally imagined for the site. However, he believed Silk Road was simply a platform, similar to Facebook or eBay. It was the users who directed how it would be utilized, and it contradicted his principles to dictate what people could or could not do. He supported a free market approach by allowing buying and selling without interference, which led to the continuous expansion of a vast array of illegal goods available on Silk Road. This growing selection attracted increasing attention to the platform. What is fascinating is that Silk Road evolved beyond a simple marketplace into somewhat of a community. Many users saw it as a movement, not just a place to trade. On the community forum, Ryan Ulbricht even introduced movie nights where once a week numerous Silk Road members would simultaneously watch the same film. The first pick for these sessions was V for Vendetta, a film with a strong anti-government message that resonated deeply with the Silk Road community. Silk Road also organized contests aimed at attracting new members, with prizes including various illegal substances. However, during one of these giveaways, the winner mysteriously vanished shortly after receiving the prize, leading some to suspect an overdose. Ryan Ulbricht wryly suggested that perhaps offering rehabilitation as a reward might have been wiser. Among the most active participants on Silk Road was someone known as Variety Jones, who began assisting Ryan by identifying bugs in the website's code and devising strategies to help the platform expand further. They started exchanging private messages daily and grew quite close. In a strange way, Variety Jones acted like a business mentor to Ryan, although no one truly knew who Variety Jones really was. Ryan Ulbricht clearly possessed extensive knowledge about the drug trade. One day, Verizon Jones sent him a message advising not to be discouraged or anything, but reminded him that their activities fell under the United States drug kingpin statutes, which carry a maximum punishment of death upon conviction, with a mandatory minimum sentence of life imprisonment. Ryan was fully aware of this reality, although he usually avoided dwelling on it. However, Variety Jones mentioned he had devised a strategy. Both of them admired the film The Princess Bride, where a notorious pirate called Dread Pirate Roberts was feared, but it was not merely one individual. This identity was passed down through several people over time. Variety Jones suggested that Ryan should adopt the name Dread Pirate Roberts on Silk Road instead of the previous username, Admin. Ryan loved the concept because in this manner, if he were ever apprehended or linked to Silk Road in any form, all responsibility could not be solely assigned to him. He could acknowledge that he had been the site's administrator, but argue that, just like in the movie, it was a title passed down from person to person, and he was no longer involved. He could assert that someone else had taken over as Dread Pirate Roberts. From that moment onward, Ryan went by Dread Pirate Roberts, or DPR for short, and he and Variety Jones continued their conversations more frequently. They even ended their daily chats with messages like, "Sweet dreams, Captain." Before meeting Variety Jones, Ryan Ulbricht had been feeling extremely isolated because he could not share what he was involved in with anyone. Especially after the incident involving Erica and Claire, Ryan had to deceive all his relatives and friends about his lifestyle. In fact, he told them he was a day trader, so they assumed he just spent a lot of time on his laptop because he was trading stocks. However, forming this digital bond with Variety Jones made him feel less solitary. He finally had a true accomplice in his endeavors. Of course, things were not flawless. As the site's popularity surged, there were several occasions when hackers successfully stole Bitcoin from Ryan due to vulnerabilities in the platform. Sometimes, they would target the site directly, forcing Ryan to pay them Bitcoin as ransom. Fortunately, by this stage, Ryan was earning so much money that losing some Bitcoin to hackers did not significantly affect him. It became an ordinary challenge he faced regularly. Ryan never imagined the site would grow to such an extent. When the platform celebrated its first year, estimates showed it was generating at least $500,000 in sales every week, which translated into substantial commissions for Ryan. Additionally, at this time, the value of Bitcoin was rising quickly, so all the earnings Ryan made from the site's transaction fees suddenly gained much greater worth. By the end of Silk Road's second year, the site had nearly 1 million users, and Ryan Ulbricht's personal net worth was reportedly in the tens of millions. Most of the funds, primarily in Bitcoin, were stored on thumb drives hidden throughout his apartments. But Ryan Ulbricht told Variety Jones that by the time he turned 30, he aimed to have a net worth of $1 billion. Remarkably, it seemed within reach. They just needed to keep growing. Within 2 years after launching Silk Road, the platform had almost 1 million users at its height. If Silk Road were any regular business, it would have been called a unicorn, a term reserved for companies valued at over $1 billion. It was astonishing. An individual in his 20s managing the largest illegal online empire from his laptop. Ryan had a slightly surreal experience during a visit to Dominica, where he realized Silk Road's value exceeded the entire country's gross domestic product. However, sometimes he was sharply reminded that the empire he was constructing had very real consequences. For example, he once saw a news report about synthetic LSD responsible for the president's death. The drug was so powerful, it caused the user to believe they could fly, leading to a fall from a balcony and severe head trauma. Ryan heard stories about teenagers who ordered a party pack from Silk Road containing synthetic drugs from China, produced in unregulated laboratories. They had simply heard about the site, gone online, followed instructions to buy Bitcoin, placed an order on Silk Road, and received it in the mail quite easily. But when one of the kids took the drug, he began experiencing intense panic. Suddenly, he had no clue where he was or what he was doing. The room was spinning wildly, so he stood up and started running without any direction. He had absolutely no idea where he was headed. Then he ran straight off the hotel balcony, plummeting 30 feet down into the parking lot beneath. I would have truly loved to witness what it all turned out to be. Regardless of your opinion about Ryan Ulbricht, you have seen firsthand what can happen if your browsing is left unprotected. I believe we can all agree on one thing. We want to keep our personal information private and secure. That is exactly why I want to introduce you to today's video sponsor, Guardio. Guardio is a browser extension designed to keep you and your family safe online. It identifies threats in real time before they can cause damage. It blocks phishing links, malicious websites, unwanted notifications, suspicious extensions, and numerous other risks. Unlike traditional antivirus programs, Guardio actually scans sites and files before you access or download anything dangerous. Since browsers store our payment information, crypto wallets, passwords, addresses, and more, it is absolutely essential to protect that data with real-time safeguards and notifications. This makes Guardio the perfect tool to guard your vulnerable details. The extension already has over 1 million users around the globe and was recently highlighted by Google. I have personally started using it and even added my family members at no extra cost. It has taken full control of my online security, and I am confident it can do the same for you. I hope this will inspire you to take charge of your online safety as well. If you want to protect your browsing today, use my linkguard.io/magnetsmedia and enjoy a limited time offer of 50% off your first month. That means only $5 a month to safeguard 5 family members. The United States government was dedicating more and more resources in the hunt for Dread Pirate Roberts. Considering that various government branches such as the FBI and DEA were involved in the Silk Road investigation, it might astonish you that the most significant progress came from an IRS agent conducting a simple Google search. Gary Alford, a tax inspector, had been assigned to the Silk Road case to trace some of the money laundering activities. However, he had very little understanding of Bitcoin, Tor, or the Silk Road itself. What worked in Gary's favor was his attention to detail. He was known for reading everything 3 times to avoid overlooking any information. Gary also enjoyed thinking creatively. His favorite criminal case was how they eventually caught the son of Sam, a serial killer who terrorized New York in the 1970s. For a long time, despite many detectives working the case, no one could identify the killer. Then one day, an officer chose a different approach by searching for cars in the area that had received parking tickets. Around the time the murders occurred, the reasoning was that the killer would hardly take a moment to return and feed the parking meter while in the midst of committing such a crime. Investigators uncovered a pattern showing that the same vehicle received parking fines on the nights the murders took place, always parked quite close to the crime scenes. They then identified the owner of this car, which eventually led them directly to the perpetrator who admitted guilt. Ryan Ulbricht was drawn to this case because it demonstrated how approaching a problem from a fresh angle could surpass the work of more seasoned professionals. He believed the creator of Silk Road must have also made a small slip, perhaps a digital equivalent to a parking ticket. Ryan began his investigation by wondering about the earliest online mention of Silk Road, reasoning that whoever launched the site would have to spark interest initially. He turned to Google, entered the Silk Road web address in the search bar, and applied advanced filters to sort results by date, focusing only on early 2011, the year when Silk Road was rumored to have been launched. Only a few results appeared, one being a comment from a user named Altoid on a forum called The Shroomery. While it seemed like a regular user rather than the site's founder, this post was the first recorded mention of Silk Road on the internet. Intrigued, Ryan searched for more messages from the user named Altoid. Around the same time, Ryan Ulbricht came across a post on a different forum called Bitcoin Talk, where someone with the identical username had asked, "Has anyone seen Silk Road yet? It is like an anonymous Amazon.com." Ryan found it curious that the earliest mentions of Silk Road online came from this very username, and this individual had been endorsing Silk Road on several forums just as the site was launching. Ryan then examined Altoid's posting history on the forum and noticed that a few months after Silk Road went live, Altoid posted again, advertising a job opening for a Bitcoin startup. Within that job advertisement, the post concluded with, "If interested, please send your answers to these questions to ryanaldridge@gmail.com." When Ryan shared these discoveries with his colleagues, they were skeptical. They said just because this user was the first to publicly mention Silk Road did not necessarily mean he was the founder. While their caution was understandable, Ryan grew more and more certain as he delved deeper into Ryan Ulbricht's profile. He first Googled the name Ryan Ulbricht and found a YouTube channel loaded with videos about libertarianism and even a saved video explaining how to evade theft detection. Additionally, the username Oh Yeah Ryan was frequently used by Ryan Ulbricht, which was notable because whenever Dread Pirate Roberts communicated, whenever someone posted on the Silk Road forum, they would always write "yeah" instead of "yes" or "oh yeah." It was always simply "yeah." This small, peculiar detail might have been more than just a coincidence. Secondly, Gary discovered Ryan Ulbricht's LinkedIn profile, which contained posts that were anti-government in nature. Ryan had written that the most extensive and systematic use of force occurs among institutions and governments. He went on to say that the best method to reform the government is to change how the governed think. To achieve this, he was developing an economic simulation to offer people a first-hand understanding of what it would feel like to live in a society without institutional violence. Thirdly, they found a coding question related to Tor on Stack Overflow posted by a user named Ryan Ulbricht. However, within a minute after posting, he changed his username to Frosty. Clearly, he had realized his mistake in revealing his true identity and quickly corrected it. Gary could not shake the suspicion that this was the person they were searching for. He then asked a coworker at the Department of Homeland Security to run a search on Ryan Ulbricht's name. They uncovered a recent incident involving him ordering fake IDs online, which had been intercepted. When questioned by an officer about this, Ryan made a cryptic remark about how, hypothetically, anyone could go to a site called Silk Road and buy them. Why Ryan said that remains unclear, though perhaps he was trying to... The point was made that purchasing fake identifications was not such a big issue these days, or perhaps he had simply become too confident that Silk Road could never be traced back to him. Regardless, Ryan Ulbricht felt that the entire situation seemed suspicious now. Of course, all these various details still did not amount to definitive proof that Ryan Ulbricht was the creator and owner of Silk Road. However, there was something else. Crucial information about the case had not been disclosed to Ryan. Honestly, no one expected this IRS agent to solve a case that multiple other agencies had been investigating for more than 2 years, so they had not thought it necessary to update him on the latest progress. While Ryan was conducting his research, the FBI had succeeded in identifying the Internet Protocol address of the Silk Road server. Using this information, they discovered that the server was located in a data center in Iceland. Collaborating with Icelandic authorities, the FBI managed to infiltrate the Silk Road server. As for how exactly the government obtained the server's IP address initially, that remains somewhat controversial. Some believe that the National Security Agency played a role and employed an unlawful surveillance technique that would have violated Ryan's Fourth Amendment rights. However, the government denied these claims, stating that they gained access due to flaws in Silk Road software, which inadvertently revealed the server's IP address. This was achievable because, as we have already determined, Silkworth's code had numerous issues due to the rapid development process by Ryan Ulbricht, who had originally been working on it entirely alone. Anyway, now that the FBI had found the Silk Road server located in Iceland, they gained access to a wealth of essential information. Most importantly, they could monitor the server's activities, such as any instances of the Silk Road administrator logging in or out. The logs revealed that the most recent administrator login had occurred from an internet cafe in San Francisco. Although this was a significant breakthrough, the FBI still lacked any concrete clues regarding the true identity of Dread Pirate Roberts. That was when Gary from the IRS made a call. Gary joined a group call with agents from other agencies involved in the investigation, such as the DEA and FBI, and presented all of his discoveries. Gary explained that a user with the name Altoid had been the first person to mention Silk Road on the internet. This individual had made several posts about Silk Road across various forums, almost as if promoting the website during its early days. Gary revealed that the user had made a mistake by including his personal email, which was ryanaldridgeeggmail.com, in one of the later posts. He then added that, on Stack Overflow, a user had posted a programming question about Tor under the username Ryan Aldridge, but then changed the name within a minute to the alias Frosty. At that exact moment, one of the other agents on the call. The call interrupted Gary abruptly when someone said, "Wait, did you just say Frosty?" Gary felt a bit annoyed as he still had more to clarify. "Yes, I said Frosty. But why are you emphasizing that word?" Gary questioned. The agent responded, "When we examined the server from Iceland, we discovered that both the server and the computer linked to DPR had been assigned the identical name, Frosty." A brief pause fell over the call as the realization began to form. Gary continued, sharing that he had tracked where Ryan Aldridge was currently residing due to the incident involving fake IDs on his record. However, when Gary revealed Ryan's present address to the FBI, they found it hard to believe. Ryan was living in San Francisco, just a few blocks away from the internet cafe, where they had traced the Silk Road administrator's IP address. This connection made it clear that he was the man they were after. The truth was now evident to everyone on the call: FBI agents, DEA agents, and Gary from the IRS. Ryan Aldridge was Dread Pirate Roberts. Gary had been correct. The mysterious criminal genius they had been pursuing for the past several years was not quite the master criminal they assumed. He had made several significant errors that revealed his real identity. His downfall resulted from simple human mistakes. This was a man in his 20s who never anticipated Silk Road would grow into what it became, and therefore he had not taken sufficient precautions to hide his tracks. Or, as Gary put it, this was like the digital version of leaving a smoking gun behind. Parking fines were a small issue that had gone unnoticed for quite some time. Regardless, the authorities finally identified Ryan Aldridge as the mastermind behind Silk Road. Their next step was to capture him. Yet surprisingly, this task proved to be more complicated than expected. The FBI deployed a squad of undercover agents to monitor Ryan closely because they gained access to Silk Road's server logs. This meant they could literally observe whenever the Silk Road administrator logged in or out. These moments always matched exactly when Ryan opened or closed his laptop, making it absolutely clear that he was the one in charge. So why did the agents not move in immediately to detain him? The reason was they needed to apprehend him with his laptop still open. That device held a treasure trove of critical information that would not only aid in convicting Ryan Aldridge, but also help track down many others involved with Silk Road or major sellers operating on the platform. If agents suddenly stormed the restaurant where he was, Ryan would likely have a chance to shut his laptop, locking the encrypted data behind a security feature that was nearly impossible to hack. Catching him without evidence of him actively using his computer would give him some plausible deniability. Therefore, the agents had to catch him red-handed, sitting at the laptop with it open, so they could irrefutably prove his involvement. When Ryan awakened on the 1st of October 2013, the day appeared just like any other. On that day, he first tried to work at a nearby cafe, but it was too crowded, and he couldn't find a spot that was private enough. So instead, he went to the San Francisco Public Library. There, he discovered a hidden corner where no one could see his screen and logged into the Silk Road's admin panel. Ryan Aldridge had no idea the library was full of undercover FBI agents observing him. Remember, if he noticed even a slight sign of the authorities, he might panic and shut down his laptop, which was encrypting all the data. They had to keep their presence secret, or everything would be lost. To distract him, two agents staged a noisy argument behind him, with one loudly swearing in the otherwise silent library. Ryan turned to look, and at that precise moment, another agent positioned right next to him grabbed the laptop off the desk. Ryan tried to catch it, but it was too late. Another agent swiftly appeared from behind and put handcuffs on him, placing him under arrest. The timing was flawless, leaving Ryan no chance to react. He was caught logged into Silk Road's admin section, with the username Frosty visible in the corner of the screen. Additionally, his unlocked laptop held a detailed diary about managing Silk Road alongside thousands of chat messages he sent while running the site. All these materials could be used as evidence against him. Proof to convict him and confirm this story came from numerous newspapers and television stations worldwide reporting on the case. The Boy Scout was secretly operating a website estimated to have trafficked $1.2 billion worth of drugs, weapons, poisons, and other illicit goods. His family firmly believed he had been wrongfully accused or that a mistake had occurred. Could this possibly be their Ryan Ulbricht? Sometimes, when I investigate these business scandals, they seem more like a Hollywood script than true events. Yet they say reality can be stranger than fiction, and the following details are truly mind-boggling. After authorities seized Ryan's open laptop, they discovered everything, including all his chat records. This led the FBI to uncover that a government official involved in the Silk World investigation had been covertly communicating with Ryan and receiving secret payments from him in return for confidential information about the case. This corrupt agent, known as Force, apparently believed that encryption of messages and using Bitcoin for transactions would shield him from detection. However, with access to Ryan's chat logs and Bitcoin records, the government gained critical evidence. The situation began when Carl, under the alias Knob, posed as a powerful drug trafficker on the Silk Road forums and initiated contact with Ryan, who was then known as Dread Pirate Roberts. Ryan Ulbricht began to establish a connection with Carla once she gained some confidence in him. He revealed that he was aware of an insider within the DEA and had started selling information related to the Silk Road investigation to Ryan. Naturally, Carla himself was the insider, accepting payments from Ryan in return for sensitive details about the case. Over several months, Carla accumulated more than $750,000 in Bitcoin for passing along intel about the Silk Road operation. However, the situation grew even more complicated. One of the workers Ryan trusted to assist with Silk Road was Curtis Green, who had become a site moderator. Then one day, Curtis received a large delivery of cocaine at his residence and was apprehended by the Baltimore task force. Ryan was perplexed when Curtis suddenly ceased communication, since initially, he was unaware of Curtis's arrest. Shortly afterward, he discovered Curtis had taken $350,000 from Silk Road because as moderator, Curtis had access to some of the platform's escrow funds. Naturally, Ryan believed Curtis had betrayed him by stealing money from the site and disappearing. But in a surprising twist, Curtis was not the thief. The real culprit was another corrupt officer from the Baltimore task force named Sean Bridges. After detaining Curtis Green, Sean had logged into the funds himself. An agent named Sean accessed Curtis's Silk Road account, which held moderator permissions, and began moving some of the Silk Road bitcoins into his own personal wallets. Essentially, this government official was diverting funds from Silk Road to his private Bitcoin accounts while logged in as Curtis through the moderator privileges. It is important to clarify that Sean was not transferring money to the authorities, but instead was secretly relocating the bitcoins for his personal gain, assuming that the nature of Bitcoin transactions would keep him undetected. To summarize, there were now two corrupt agents involved in the Silk Road investigation, both connected to the Baltimore task force, each operating their own separate schemes to steal bitcoins. As for Ryan Ulbricht, he was completely unaware of these actions and just presumed that Curtis had stolen from him. Based on messages found on Ryan's computer, he decided to hire someone to confront Curtis. At first, Ryan did not intend to harm him seriously. His goal was merely to reclaim his money and possibly intimidate Curtis. However, Ryan's associates within the Silk Road network, including individuals like Variety Jones, convinced him that eliminating Curtis was necessary to send a firm warning. They argued that if Ryan did not take action, other Silk Road members might consider betraying him in the future. Reluctantly, Ryan agreed to this plan and asked if anyone was capable of killing Curtis. This request was seen by Carl Force, the other corrupt agent involved in this tangled web. Ryan Ulbricht, who was part of the same team that had just arrested Curtis, saw an opportunity to make even more money for himself. Carl responded using his username and claimed he knew some experts who could complete the task. He said they required $40,000 upfront and another $40,000 after the job was done. Ryan sent the initial payment. Carl then took Curtis, who was in custody, and staged his death. They took a photo that appeared to show Curtis's lifeless body, but Curtis was very much alive. It was only a staged image. Unaware of this, Ryan assumed the hit had been successfully carried out and paid the remaining sum to Carl. Ryan later messaged that he was a little unsettled by the photo and explained, "I am new to this kind of thing." It was obvious he felt quite troubled about ordering a hit on someone. Yet as far as Ryan was concerned, Curtis had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from him, so he justified that having him eliminated was necessary. In reality, Curtis was still alive, and it was the crooked agent Sean who had stolen money from Curtis's moderator accounts, while Carl was the corrupt agent who faked Curtis's death to make even more money from the supposed hit. Soon after, Ryan would order hits on 5 other people who crossed him, including a hacker attempting to extort money. To Ryan, he now believed he had the power to pay for anyone's death if needed. In a diary on Ryan's computer, he recorded sending payment to Angels reported a hit on Tony 76 and his 3 partners, followed by an update about some work he completed on the site that day. It seemed ordering a hit had become almost a routine part of the job for Ryan Ulbricht. However, just like with the hit planned on Curtis, none of the murders Ryan funded ever actually happened, and no bodies were found. Apparently, Ryan was being deceived by others pretending to be hit men, and no one was truly killed. This was fortunate for us because when he was eventually apprehended in the library and all the messages he had sent were uncovered, the murder-for-hire charges were dismissed. Even though there was proof from his chat logs that he paid for the hits and believed they were executed, it turned out to be an elaborate con, so he could not be convicted of murder since no one was killed. For legal reasons, it is important to mention that Ryan Ulbricht's family continues to assert that those messages were planted on his device and that he never wrote them himself. As for Carl and Sean, the 2 corrupt agents, both received sentences of about 6 years in prison each. It is truly unbelievable that 2 separate government officials working on the same case tried to steal such large amounts and secretly transfer it to their own Bitcoin wallets. If Ryan had not been caught, they probably would have gone undetected as well. But since he was captured, now we must examine the next part of the story. The final and most important aspect of this story is what truly happened to Ryan Ulbricht. Before continuing, let's take a brief pause. If you have been enjoying this video up to this point, I would really appreciate it if you could activate the notification bell for Magnates Media. I share short films about business, money, marketing, and much more. However, subscribing alone does not guarantee you will see all the new content, so please consider turning on notifications, and I will be grateful forever. Ryan faced charges on 7 different counts, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and the kingpin laws, which usually apply only to cartel bosses. Even though he was caught red-handed, logged into the Silk Road platform as its administrator, he maintained his innocence. His defense team admitted that Ryan had created the Silk Road but insisted it was only a social experiment, not a profit-driven venture. They also claimed that shortly after launching the website, events spiraled out of control, leading Ryan to sell it to another party known as Dread Pirate Roberts. According to them, Ryan had no connection with the site afterward and was being framed by the real Dread Pirate Roberts. They contended that the chat logs and diary found on Ryan's computer were deliberately planted to shift full responsibility onto him. Regrettably for Ryan, the evidence against him was overwhelming. He had literally been caught logged into. The Silk Road administration page appeared on his laptop while he was at the library. Moreover, the chat records on his computer reached back several years, revealing everything he had discussed, including his conversation with Variety Jones where they created the name Dread Pirate Roberts as a cover in case he was ever apprehended. The messages also showed DPR telling someone he was purchasing fake identifications because he wanted to broaden the Silk Road service network. These messages were sent exactly when Ryan Ulbricht's fake IDs had been intercepted. Regarding the claim that Ryan sold the site, there was absolutely no evidence or sign supporting that. Additionally, Ryan continued to receive all the Bitcoin from the sales commissions, so it was evident he had been managing the whole operation from beginning to end. Ryan Ulbricht had been Dread Pirate Roberts all along. Despite this, supporters came from all directions to defend Ryan during the trial. Many protested on the courthouse steps, calling him a hero. They insisted that all Ryan had done was run a website, and if that was a crime, then the CEOs of eBay and Craigslist should also face trial since illegal items were sold there as well. However, the jury disagreed completely. They found him guilty on all charges. The chat logs and files on Ryan's computer were simply too incriminating. If only he had closed his laptop lid back in the library, it might have been much harder to prove so much against him. Before his sentencing, Ryan Ulbricht sent a letter to the judge saying that he had already lived through his youth and understood that his middle years must be taken away. However, he pleaded, "Please let me keep my old age. Leave a small light at the end of the tunnel. Something to encourage me to stay healthy, something to hope for better days, and a chance to make amends in the outside world before I face my Creator." Despite this heartfelt appeal, the judge chose not to heed his words. Ryan Ulbricht was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years without the possibility of parole. In other words, he was condemned to spend the rest of his days behind bars. Some believe this punishment was excessively severe, but the judge appeared determined to use his case as a warning to prevent others from establishing similar online markets in the future. She further justified her ruling by rejecting Ryan Ulbricht's belief that drug use only harms the user. She argued that many others suffer due to the dangerous substances sold through Silk Road. There are lives lost, families torn apart, addicts created, many of whom lose the capacity to care for their children. As a result, entire generations can grow up neglected or orphaned. The judge described Silk Road as a cause of irreversible damage to numerous people. She also noted that although no bodies were discovered, Ryan Ulbricht had arranged for 5 murders, which he financed, and was confident these acts had been carried out. Ultimately, the evidence against Ryan Ulbricht was compelling, leading to his harsh sentencing. Sentenced to life imprisonment, of course, there are 2 perspectives to consider. On one side, research has demonstrated that individuals were significantly less likely to suffer physical harm when purchasing these substances online, in comparison to buying them on the streets. Ryan Ulbricht attempted to argue that Silk Road actually provided a safer experience, especially thanks to the review system on the site. If people were going to acquire illegal goods regardless, Silk Road was arguably a much safer option. Ryan was also technically a first-time offender and the charge was nonviolent, which made the life sentence appear excessively harsh. While Ryan created the Silk Road platform, besides the initial mushrooms he cultivated, he was not directly selling drugs himself. He acted as a website administrator. It is also possible to claim that drug transactions frequently happen on platforms like Facebook and Snapchat, but this does not mean the creators of those platforms should be held accountable. On the other hand, there's a notable difference between Silk Road and other websites. Those other platforms do not permit illegal sales, whereas Silk Road actively supported and facilitated them. Additionally, a 2015 report by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention revealed that for the first time in recent times, more Americans had died from opioid overdoses than from gun violence. One of the primary reasons behind this increase in fatalities was the easy access people had to these substances. People suddenly had the ability to obtain these substances, and the increase in drug misuse happened alongside the rising fame of Silk Road. To put it simply, individuals gained access to products they most likely could not have found without Silk Road. In numerous instances, this resulted in tragic deaths. Silk Road allowed users of all ages to easily get dangerous drugs and illegal items, and Ryan Ulbricht was the one who made this possible. In fact, he personally sanctioned the sale of many highly hazardous goods. Regardless of where you stand on the issue, you must admit that it is not entirely one-sided. What appears certain is that Ryan Ulbricht was the founder and manager of Silk Road, and between February 6, 2011 and July 23, 2013, it is estimated that over 1,200,000 unique purchases were made on the platform. The site generated over 9,500,000 bitcoins in total sales. Out of this amount, 614,305 bitcoins were collected by Silk Road as fees. A portion of these funds was funneled back into developing the platform, paying staff, and maintaining operations, while another share was taken by Ryan Ulbricht himself. When he was apprehended in 2013, that money was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, its value would be in the tens of billions. It is quite ironic that Ryan Ulbricht was a huge fan of the television show Breaking Bad, as his story shares obvious similarities. He was a seemingly ordinary man who gradually turned into a drug lord, becoming increasingly ruthless over time. In a way similar to ordering a hit to have someone killed, both individuals began with seemingly noble intentions. For Walt, it was about covering his medical expenses, and for us, the goal was to provide people with freedom. However, both became too enamored with the power and wealth they acquired. They allowed themselves to be swept up in the success and took things too far until eventually all consequences caught up to them. Although the judge had hoped that the punishment given to Ryan Aldridge would discourage anyone else from creating another Silk Road, the opposite happened almost immediately. After the original Silk Road was shut down, Silk Road 2.0 appeared. It could be argued that the heightened attention from the Silk Road case only sparked greater interest in the concept. However, sequels rarely outshine their predecessors. And indeed, the various Silk Road follow-ups have not reached the same level of infamy as Ryan Aldridge's original site. Silk Road 2 lasted exactly 1 year before federal agents discovered the server hosting it in a foreign country and traced it back to the email blakebentel.net. It turned out that a man named Blake Bentel, who supposedly operated the site, used his personal email account with his full name to register the Silk Road 2 server. Just like Ryan Aldridge's use of his own email led the FBI to him, the same problem caught Blake. I still do not understand why someone would use their real personal email in such a risky operation. Once again, there was some dispute around how the authorities handled the investigation. It was possible to track down this server initially because some authorities employed a possibly unlawful surveillance method. Others believe the Tor network itself might be insecure. There are numerous theories around this, yet none have stopped many similar dark markets from emerging over the past several years. Usually, when one market closes, another one soon appears. However, quite frequently, it turns out that the entire platform was fraudulent from the start, or even a government-operated trap designed to catch sellers. Fascinatingly, many individuals who create these Silk Road imitators or other illegal markets choose the name Dread Pirate Roberts. In that sense, Ryan Aldridge's concept of a free market that would endure and be handed down personally did come to pass, although with Ryan now facing a lifetime in prison, that likely offers little comfort. If you found this account of Silk Road captivating, I believe you will be fascinated by a video I made about Mark Zuckerberg's rival, the Bitcoin billionaires. This video explores Bitcoin's emergence, its connections to Silk Road, and you can watch the remarkable full story right now by clicking here. Before I finish, I want to express my gratitude for watching until the end. You are amazing, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.